There are two significant problems facing Black Ops 6, which you need to be aware of, and they've kind of been swept under the rug so far, so I'm going to use this whiteboard to explain exactly what they are. To dig into the first one, which is pretty terrifying, we need to go back in time. When Black Ops 4 came out, I'm sure you'll all remember the blue screen issues that were affecting consoles at the time. You would load into a game, and it could be a game of Blackout, or it could be a game of zombies, and your console would just end up crashing. And in zombies, that would mean that you would lose maybe half an hour, or an hour and a half of progress in that match. This was very frustrating, but crucially for this video, that wasn't actually a console-specific issue. It affected PC as well. This crashing that was happening kind of had two separate sources. One was the instability of the EXE itself, which is the same thing that console was suffering from, but there was actually a second issue on PC. You see, Black Ops 4 introduced a requirement that all the players playing zombies, for example, at any time, whether you were in solo or co-op, had to be connected to the internet. If you didn't have a connection to their server, you couldn't play. This mandatory connection was a really big problem for the community, and it still is to this day, because if you're a high round player, for example, and your internet fluctuates while you're in the middle of an 80-hour world record attempt, sorry, you lose access to your match. You can't play it locally. And this was just the beginning of internet connectivity being a problem for people playing Call of Duty, especially zombies players. In Vanguard Zombies, Treyarch had to migrate to a new engine. They had to take their old Treyarch features that they had on the Treyarch engine and map them over to fit inside this Sledgehammer-led Call of Duty. What that meant is that various networking features that Treyarch had built over the years, such as being able to pause the game in a solo match, were not available in Vanguard. Now, for those of you with amazing memories, you may remember that in Advanced Warfare Zombies, when Sledgehammer were developing that mode, they also didn't have a solo pause in the game to begin with. The Sledgehammer game didn't really have the excuse that the Treyarch team had with Vanguard Zombies, but still, there was a lack of care and attention being paid to the solo experience. And to be clear also, by this point, co-op pause had been introduced in Zombies. This was something that we had kind of started to take for granted. And so when Vanguard started going even further with these anti-kind of player features, like anti-quality of life, like kicking you for being AFK, even just for a period of about 30 seconds. And this has happened to me multiple times on live stream when playing Vanguard Zombies. And that's crazy to say because I've only streamed Vanguard Zombies a handful of times, and it's still happened multiple times that you could AFK for 30 seconds in that game and it could kick you, or at least it used to do when it had a player count of more than 7. And that's crazy, right? The idea that you could just stand still in Zombies waiting for a round to change and then be booted for inactivity should never be a thing, and yet in Vanguard Zombies it was. So a slightly different problem to what was seen in Black Ops 4, but a problem nonetheless, and an erosion of care and attention, like I said, for the solo experience. In Modern Warfare 3 Zombies, everything changed. First of all, the entire Modern Warfare 3 Zombies mode is online only. You cannot play it without an internet connection, similar to Black Ops 4, except in Black Ops 4 this was a PC-specific rule, I guess? Whereas in Modern Warfare 3 Zombies, it's for everybody, console and PC, you have to be online. This means there is literally no solo experience for Modern Warfare 3 Zombies. It is an impossible mode to play solo because no matter what, you're only going to start a match if it's match made you with other players and filled up your lobby. This also means that even if you were trying to play local, for instance, like imagine you were just on the couch with buddies and you wanted to play Zombies, you can't. That experience does not exist. This means that you are entirely dependent on the servers. And if, for example, the servers are being crashed by other players who are doing sentry duplication glitches and things like that, then your experience is completely blown to smithereens, and there is no way around that. You can't just say, oh, people are doing this one dupe glitch right now, it's a weekend, Treyarch aren't like super on it with patching it currently, and so I'll just play a local game and I won't have to worry about the servers going down. You can't do that because you have to play with those other people. They can ruin your experience if there's an issue in the game like that. And Modern Warfare 3 has its own continued issues that I could go on a tangent about with regard to how other players can negatively impact that solo player experience. Like if everyone always floods into tier 3, then most likely that solo player is not going to be able to always get the contracts that they want and stuff like that. They're just going to be hoarded by other teams. that's a topic for another day. Leave a comment if you want more whiteboard videos like this in the future, maybe. But I want to stay on task here. All of these things bring us to the first problem that Black Ops 6 is facing. And remember, there are 2 in the video here, and the second one ain't great either. I hate to be the bearer of bad news here, but Black Ops 6 requires a continuous internet connection at all times to play any mode. That includes campaign. Now, this has a variety of really negative connotations, some of which we haven't even begun to get into here. But first, let's talk about why this might actually be the case. Because there are some positives to this as well, which you might be kind of surprised by. So let's start with some of those potential positives. Potential being a very carefully, cautiously used word here. The first possible positive impact is the idea that this will actually mean the visuals of the game are better. Now, please be skeptical of this one because this is Treyarch and Activision's argument, so you really can't take it at face value. But they have this issue, and it is an issue, that the game's estimated file size right now, all things considered, all things included in the COD app, is 310 gigabytes. It's bonkers. And so they obviously want to try and reduce that. And one of the things that being online allows them to do is texture stream textures to your console dependent on your internet speed. And so you can achieve these high quality visuals while having lower on-disk file sizes, like on your actual hard drive, because that data is just coming in over your internet. It's texture streaming, which we saw really being leaned into from sort of like Black Ops 3, I guess, onwards, maybe. I'm sure a dev can reach out to me on DM or something and correct me if I got that one wrong. But texture streaming was a really big thing in Black Ops 3. Maybe that was just a local client-side texture streaming thing so that they didn't have to have all of those assets in the RAM at a given time. Not sure. Regardless, they're trying to sort of argue that, yeah, the game is going to look really crispy because we can make use of your internet so that you don't have a 1,000 gigabyte file on your hard drive. Instead, you can just temporarily download that and then display it in the game, and it will be all fancy and nice. The second thing is something that I think we as a community probably haven't considered quite as much, because this is something that is a little less obvious, I think, and that's server compute. So what I mean by this is that on a given day, booting up your console, it has a certain amount of power for what it can render in front of you and all of the calculations it needs to do to make the game work. And that amount of power is finite. The client side, that's the side which your console is on, computing power is limited to what your console can do. Now, if you look at, for example, a Modern Warfare 3 Zombies situation, there is simply too much going on in Modern Warfare 3 Zombies for one Xbox or one PlayStation to calculate and put together and render and serve to the player all in one go. It is too complex. And as a result, they need something else to take some of that kind of thinking away from your console. And so they push that onto the server side instead. And so in Modern Warfare 3, part of the reason it's online only is that the server itself is doing a whole load of thinking to be able to construct the game experience that you're being delivered. So the number of AI on the map, for example, holding all of that stuff in memory, holding in memory all of the things that each of those AI are doing, holding all the players in memory as well, being able to make sure that the networking is all sorted. Like, all of those things need to be thought about by a computer somewhere in the picture, and it's the server that is doing much of that thinking in Modern Warfare 3. I'm obviously simplifying language here a huge amount, but I'm doing it to just try and improve clarity. I'm a no-nonsense kind of guy. So in Black Ops 6, if we take what's possible in Modern Warfare 3 Zombies in terms of scale, right, with 20 people running around a server or whatever the number is, I actually forget right now, and the size of the map as well, it's an enormous map, and the amount of AI that you can have on that map and the bosses that are on that map at the same time and all of those things, right? You take all of the scale and the thinking power of that experience, and you bring that into an experience which is 4-player only in Black Ops 6, and that means that there's that much more headroom for even bigger and crazier amounts of AI and sizes of AI and sizes of maps and just more things in memory at a given time, complexity and detail and fun stuff. That's pretty exciting, right? So the reason I've got my blue pen out here and circled this one for server compute is that that's a genuine big benefit to the Zombies experience. It's no longer limited by what's just on the console. And also, seeing as we know that this is going to be a backwards compatible game, it's also not going to be as limited by the last generation of consoles, because again, they can take some of the kind of load away from the console itself and put it on the server. So that's a good thing. The problem is that with that comes all of the issues that I talked about here and more that we'll get into in a second. Now, by no means do I want to come across here as being the guy that is just shilling for bad things being introduced in Call of Duty. After all, I'm the creator that doesn't get invited to anything, so I've got no incentive to do that. So let's talk negatives real quick as well here, right? So, some cynical reasons why they might be doing this is quite simply that they want to squeeze more money out of your wallet. What the hell do I mean by that? In Black Ops 3 Zombies, the Gobblegum system was introduced for the first time, and in that game, you could dashboard just before your match ended, and the Gobblegums that you used in that match would stay in your inventory, like they wouldn't be used up. This was actually a really big part of the Black Ops 3 Zombies experience. Like, I think pretty much all the players that have ever played Black Ops 3 have dashboarded in some way to save their gobbles at some time. Like, it's part of our culture in a very strange way. And I think Black Ops 3 Zombies would have felt very different if dashboarding wasn't a thing. But nowadays, with the path that we've gone on towards always online connectivity, suddenly they can update the server as you use these power-ups, these gobblegums or what have you, so that they can keep track of what you have used and what you haven't. And so there's a lot more room for them to say, oh, you tried to dashboard to save your little gobblegums that you used in this Black Ops 6 match, because gobblegums are coming back, remember? So the same system is going to be there, but now they have this strangely useful feature to stop dashboarding and force you to burn through your gobblegums more, and therefore force you to spend more COD points on buying more gobblegums and giving more money to Activision. And this one's a complex one, right? Because on the one hand, you could say, oh, Milo, you're just being too cynical here, and like there'll still be ways to dashboard, first of all, like people will still figure it out, possible, but then also like, surely this seems like a lot to do just to then try and squeeze more money out of microtransactions. But just think for a moment, over the last few years, how Call of Duty has changed in favor of microtransactions, right? You remember those pesky things called operators, which we all hate and we all wish weren't in the game, and which we're finally moving away from in Black Ops 6, at least partially? That system is entirely there to squeeze more money out of your pocket. They directly said this is a worse gameplay experience. This is worse for the narrative. It is worse for zombies as a mode, but we're just going to charge ahead and do it anyway because ultimately we need money. And I get it, they're a business on the one hand, but on the other hand, you're ruining the mode making those sorts of decisions and taking away from the experience instead of making it better. In my personal view, which maybe is naive, who knows, I would imagine that making the best possible mode and most fun possible zombies experience would be the best path to higher levels of monetization, rather than trying to force in features to over monetize when the mode itself was underbaked or needed more work. Like, I don't think these sorts of things should come at the expense of the experience, but operators absolutely did do, and so I don't think I'm being overly cynical to suggest that part of the reason that this might be the case is so that they can make another similar move to try and rinse the community. I think that that's a possible reason why. Now, there are other reasons that I could get into for this red box here, but I think it's going to be more valuable for us to spend a moment just thinking about the actual implications that this has for zombies. So forced online connectivity with no local play makes me worry about several things. I'm going to list them out for you now. Number one, it worries me that there may be no pause in solo, at least if they rest on the laurels of, oh, we moved to a new engine and it was difficult to implement these sorts of things, so sorry, we'll work on it or something, right? Just like we saw with Vanguard. I think that at this point, seeing as it's been a 4-year dev cycle, they'd better have implemented those sorts of features, but still, the combination of all these things means that no pause in solo is a concern until they confirm that it's in. Number two, no pause in co-op. That would be an issue as well. I'd really like to see pausing in co-op return, and all of these circumstances make me cynical about the likelihood of actually seeing that feature. Number three, I want server stability, and I can't necessarily trust there to be server stability, because even in a game like Black Ops 4, which wasn't trying to do all this crazy stuff with server-side insane computation to make the mode even bigger, right? It was a much more simple zombies experience in that regard. Even so, we saw lag in Black Ops 4, and that meant that you might be in a high round attempt, and then you would lag for a second, and you would die, and it would ruin your world record run, it would ruin your round 100 run, it would ruin your day. So server stability is a really important thing that I don't have confidence in really right now, because I can rely on my console doing stuff locally, but I can't necessarily rely on a server in the same way. Number 4, what if they take the servers offline in 5 years? Like, what if they just drop server support? What if they do that? The implications here are that Black Ops 6 Zombies is no longer playable for anybody, anywhere, on any platform, ever. Black Ops 6 Zombies basically has an end date built in because of the fact that it's online only. And that is criminal. That is absolutely bonkers. Let's put that into perspective for a second, right? To this day, maps like Origins, for example, on Black Ops 2, are still having world records beaten over and over again, new speedrun times being set, all those sorts of things. But can you imagine if tomorrow Origins stopped being playable? Just gone. In that world, there would be a final world record. You wouldn't be able to try and beat it. There'd be a final speedrun time. You'd have a final personal best. And you just have to look back on that content and be like, oh yeah, that was good in the past. Similarly, if you get into zombies in the future, or you get a friend into the zombies in the future, and you want to go back and play Origins, sorry, bro. Yeah, Origins has been sunset. They've taken the servers down. You can't access it anymore. Can you imagine? Like, that is insane. It is so insane. And so a world where internet connection is required at all times in a mode which really and truly should have a local version available is terrifying. Like, I'm worried because I don't trust Activision for a second that in 5 years, 6 years, 7 years, or whatever, they're gonna deprecate Black Ops 6. Like, this cannot be a Black Ops 3 level golden era of zombies if it has an end date in this way. It just can't. And so the elephant in the room here that I've got jotted down in between these 2 points, because there's still some other issues we need to get into in just a second, that's the fact that all of this stuff needs to be addressed. So far, we've seen Kevin Drew, right, in the Black Ops 6 reveal stream, the Black Ops 6 Direct, sitting with a book next to him that was quite literally titled, "Thanks for the Feedback, the Science and Art of Receiving Feedback Well, even when it's off base, unfair, poorly delivered, and frankly, you're not in the mood." This is just a funny little, haha, we heard you, round-based is coming back, we know that you really like round-based, here it is. But within this, right, there is an implication that you are listening to feedback. And something I've been harping on about since Black Ops 4, when my connections with Activision originally bit the dust, because when the game came out, I was so vocal about the blue screen issues that were happening. I've been trying to convey this really important point that seems to have just very continuously fallen on deaf ears over and over and over again, which is that zombies comms, right, the way that Treyarch and Activision talk to the zombies community has really suffered since Jason left. And I'm not saying that Jason was a saint here. I'm not saying that Jason was the best thing since sliced bread. But what I am saying is that the way that he communicated with the community was pretty good. There was a lot to like there. And it really felt like there was a conversation happening between the fan and the devs and the fans and a fan and the game itself that we've lost since then. It's just been gone. And that's not me sort of being high and mighty and being like, boo, the new team or anything like that. That's purely me saying there has been a real shift in communications from the old zombies to now. And this is okay, right? Activision is a lumbering Goliath of a company, and it's difficult to have this scrappy, upstart, kind of off the record, black book kind of operation in the zombies department where they kind of don't play by the rules and do their own thing and play fast and loose. Like, I understand that's going to be very hard to swing in a company the size of Activision and with as much on the line as they have. I get it. But at the same time, it doesn't feel like meaningful progress has really been made. It's felt like this has been a pain point, an elephant in the room for a really long time. And I'm not saying that this has to be solved at the snap of the fingers immediately. I'm not saying that we need Jason Blundell back. I'm not saying that Kevin Drew needs to become Jason Blundell. I'm just saying that the community is going to have anxieties around all of these things, right? And Kevin Drew, if you're listening and the book on your table about taking feedback is something that you're genuinely doing in earnest and you're really trying, then please heed what I'm saying here. I mean it only with goodwill. This is what your audience are worrying about currently. And you have two paths ahead of you. You can either address the feedback, as you've already started to do with round-based coming back, which is good, right? Props for that. But you can continue in that direction and try and reassure people about these worrying things, because I think that they're genuinely worrying. Or Treyarch can continue the very filtered, narrow, almost silent approach that they have with regards to the zombies community, which often doesn't feel like it's speaking the zombies community's language. It doesn't feel like it's personable for the zombies players specifically. It feels like it's written by ChatGPT almost for what that bot thinks a zombies fan is, rather than being one of us. And I think that the most likely path here is that the ChatGPT, not the best zombie support angle is what happens. And that disappoints me because I've been harping on about this for so many years, right? To my own detriment as well. Like, it would be so much easier if I wasn't honest, seriously. But those two paths exist. Like, it's not just the path of the narrower, silent, less communicative approach. There is a world where Treyarch recognizes internally there is a specific need here for the way that it communicates with the zombies community to shift just a little bit. And that could start with these sorts of worries being addressed. I think that this is the case for 90%, honestly, of the problems the zombies mode faces. It's communication. It comes down to that so frequently, and I want to see it improve. I think all of us in the community do. Drop me a like on the video if you agree with that. Now, the other element here, which I've still somehow not even gotten to, God, I've got a lot of zombies opinions, my bad, guys. But the other thing goes in a completely different direction. Der Riese is one of the most loved zombies maps of all time. It's the go-to map when people ask me what my favorite map is. I say Der Riese. I even say the World at War version pretty frequently. It's just a classic. But did you know that Der Riese is actually a copy-pasted multiplayer map called Nightfire? It's true. Der Riese came out and there's an MP map called Nightfire where you can run around the exact same environment. It's just that different doors are open and things like that. So for example, where Quick Revive is in Der Riese, you can get out the back there, you can kind of run around the back of that building, and there are no massive teleporters. So this was an instance of a zombies map coming out and it being repurposed assets and it being completely fine, right? Nobody cares. Der Riese is amazing. Similar situation. Ascension. Another similar situation. 5. There is a precedent for this being a thing in zombies and it being okay. However, changing to the red pen here, Vanguard basically spit in the face of the entire zombies community with regard to this point. It said, oh, okay, you're all right with us repurposing some assets here and there. Well, we're just going to do that for the entirety of the game. So you're going to be playing in multiplayer maps, basically. And then for the few areas which are zombies specific, we're going to actually re-release that same space as another DLC later in the year, just with a different color added, just a different tint. And we're going to pass it off as a new thing. It was, for lack of a better word, it was just laughable. Like, all of us in the community were like, what? How do they think, do they think we're this dumb, right? Like, how do they think they can get away with that? And to be absolutely clear and to be fair to the Treyarch team, they were working on borrowed time with Vanguard. They had very little time to develop the game. They were working on a tiny smidgen of their resourcing. Like, it was a challenging development cycle for Vanguard Zombies. Don't get me wrong. But the problem, ironically, I mean, it's not even ironic at this point because it always comes back to this, and I've been yelling this for so many years now. God, I'm a broken record. The problem really was comms, right? They put this out there as being this a new take on the zombies formula that was going to blow us all away, and they really built it up to be the next level of zombies, right? We just had Cold War. Cold War was pretty damn good. And they were making out like Vanguard was going to be equally good, if not better. And then it was Vanguard. And we were all just like, are you serious? For real? God. So there was a marketing problem, I think, with Vanguard, and that only served to amplify the problems that it was having. I think that we would have all been a bit more willing to sort of forgive it if they'd come out and said, yeah, this is just going to be a teeny tiny little taster just to kind of tide you guys over. They did not say that. Then Modern Warfare 3 comes along. Modern Warfare 3 Zombies is set in Urzikstan, which is just a Warzone map. And so there is zero environmental storytelling across that space. It's very boring. From a zombies perspective, it doesn't feel like it has any atmosphere whatsoever. And again, I'm not being hyperbolic here. If you compare a map even like a Der Riese, which again, I said was repurposed, right, to something like an Urzikstan except in Modern Warfare 3 Zombies, it's just bland. There is no seasoning. It's completely flavorless. And that's because of the fact that it's a repurposed map. So then you might think, okay, well, they've got those dark ether bits, right? Where you can go in a portal and go into the dark ether. Surely that's awesome. The problem is that even the dark ether bits, which are more customized, and they do have some really cool elements to them. I want to be absolutely fair here. The skybox, for instance, I love, but the skybox is just a skybox. The map itself is just Al Mazrah. Over and over again. For every single one, it's just been Al Mazrah, Al Mazrah, Al Mazrah, Al Mazrah. And the problem with this is, I constantly feel like the zombies canon, the lore, the story of the zombies mode is being funneled into much less interesting locales because of the fact that they've gone, oh, we have to have this be part of the wider Call of Duty cinematic universe that we're building because we desperately want to be Marvel, and by building that Call of Duty cinematic universe, that allows us to put soap in zombies as an operator and sell more skins. And so all of the really bombastic, fun stuff that we had in the past, like for example, going to the moon, that feels like so much less likely a possible path these days, because instead, everything has to come back to modern warfare realism. It has to be grounded in this way. Even the Cold War zombie story, which largely, Cold War I thought was a good game, but the story itself really suffers from the fact that it's like a story about nukes. And don't get me wrong, nukes have been in zombies sort of for a while, but they've been nukes in the sense of what happens if you blow up the moon? Or what happens if you blow up Earth itself? And then we've seen the outcome of that. Like, we've actually lived that sci-fi, fantasy, imagined future. But the nukes that we're getting in Cold War onwards are just the same things that we're seeing in Warzone all the time, which is like, oh no, not another global geopolitical threat. I really am worried that the insert othered group here, such as the Russians or the Chinese or people from Urzikstan, I guess, or whatever made-up country they're going to go to next. I hope they don't get control of the nukes because they must be bad. Oh, wait a second. Here's a character from one of those factions who we get to like, and now we're conflicted. Like, it's painful. It's painful because that is not the zombie story. The zombie story is meant to have the sci-fi fantasy weird element. It is meant to be there. The entire core premise from Days Gone By was this foundational, what if insert moment of history here actually happened a different way and it was a cover-up, right? And the same goes for Black Ops as well, to be clear, but it's so obvious in zombies to the point that when they rebooted the story with the Chaos story in Black Ops 4, I mean, it wasn't even a reboot, they just did a new story, they were so aware of the fact that the premise of zombies was a historical event that then went a different way, but it was covered up by the media or what have you. They understood that to such an extent that a map like a Voyage of Despair, for instance, right, is quite literally the Titanic, but with an alternate ending. Like, they got it. They understood that. Nowadays, we're getting so many of these repurposed, bland environments. It doesn't feel like it lets us live out that dream of figuring out what this alternate future, alternate history thing could be. Like, Gorod Krovi, such a good example. Oh yeah, Battle of Stalingrad. Yeah, cool. All right, historical event. Dragons now? Okay. Yeah, sure. Let's explore what that would have been like. So by sucking the soul out of zombies in a big way, which is implicit when you suck out the environmental storytelling, you end up with a husk, and it's just nowhere near as fun. And this is why it sort of sucks when we just get facility map after facility map after facility map after facility map. They're all the same. It's all bland. So this brings us to Black Ops 6. 12 days ago, I posted a theory about one of the two zombies maps that I thought was going to be in BO6. I thought one was going to be an island, which we've seen in the trailer, and it all looks like new assets and stuff, so pretty big thumbs up there. Like, that's looking pretty good so far. But this second map, I was speculating to be based in Harper's Ferry, or based on Harper's Ferry, like inspired by Harper's Ferry in real life, and for the map to be Liberty Falls. And I posted this whole rabbit hole theory on it, and I'll link it on screen right now so you can go and click through to that if you want to give it a watch. Now, what's interesting is that it seems like my theory's been kind of confirmed, because in the Black Ops 6 Direct, we've already seen stuff in this fictional town of Liberty Falls. For example, this cop car is quite literally the Liberty Falls police. And so presumably this whole mall kind of area is also set in Liberty Falls. And so no huge issues here, right? Like, we've seen multiplayer maps and zombies maps share the same kind of locales before and it's been fine, but there have also been times where it's really not been fine. And so my fear is that part of the reason that that map has been chosen is pretty much purely because they were going to make a multiplayer map of it. And they were like, yeah, we can double dip, right? And I get it. From a game dev perspective, you want to make good use of your resources, but at the same time, we've seen that have really bad implications. Now, to be clear, I know the counter argument here would be to say, oh, that probably just means that the zombies map isn't gonna be Liberty Falls. And if that's the case, hell yeah, in a weird way. Like, I look forward to being wrong in some ways, but at the same time, with leaks kind of acting as confluence here and stuff in the files and just in general, it does seem to be going in the Liberty Falls direction. So this may end up not being a problem, and that would be amazing. Like, I would love that. I don't want there to be issues, right? But still, gonna flag it regardless, just so that we can kind of keep it in mind, because there's a wider point here that I think still stands about the way zombies has kind of been blended with some of the other modes over the years. Okay, back to the whiteboard. So even if Liberty Falls, the zombies map, is completely different to Liberty Falls, the multiplayer map, and even if Liberty Falls is in the campaign as well and is still really different, as much as it's nice for my theory to sort of be confirmed by all this, the big but is that zombies is in dire need of feeling like it can break away from the multiplayer in the campaign and things like that, should it desire to. It needs to be able to do that. It needs to be anti-COD. Like, zombies, I really truly believe, should be anti-COD in its thesis, right? It should be counterculture to whatever COD is proposing. Zombies should almost feel like it's going the other way. That's how it has been since the beginning, and that's when it's worked the best. And it's early days, so I will continue to make videos on this, and you can subscribe to the channel so you don't miss those. But the way to summarize all this is as follows. Homogenization of zombies, multiplayer, campaign, and Warzone is bad. It means that they can save on resources, which is good. That is a positive, but it so frequently has come at the expense of the soul of the zombies mode. And so sure, I'm being a bit overprotective here, right? But I'm doing so because I don't want this to happen again. And it doesn't just go for the launch maps, okay? This goes for the DLC season. It goes for whatever they're going to be making in a year 2, if there's a year 2. Like, I'm so desperate for zombies to feel like it's getting zombies resourcing again. Not just kind of the sort of afterthought, sort of secondhand whiff of the other modes. It's all going to come down to comms though. So Treyarch, I'm praying here, talk to us. And if they do, I'll be posting an update video on that as soon as it happens. If you enjoy these sorts of videos, please hit the subscribe button. I'm trying to hit 2 mil subs this year, and that'll let me know that I should make another one nice and soon.